Cool. So Josh, welcome to People Just Like You. Thanks so much for coming on. Very excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited. I'm really excited.
Right on. Well, yeah, we always love to dive right in. So first question for you. Can you describe what you do for work?
Yeah, so I work in mental health. What I specifically do is very new and very interesting and very needed. So I'm a behavioral health and substance use recovery CPSW, which is another term for it is peer counselor or peer support worker. Um, so CPSW work is an evidence-based practice, and so I really work with people through their recovery on resiliency, skill building, doing trauma work, stages of change, conflict resolution. A lot of time, obviously everybody's different. It depends on the individual situation, but a lot of times there's like kind of case management work as well, getting people connected with the proper resources. Here in my state of New Mexico, we have a program called SNAP, like a lot of community resources if you need help with clothing, food. So that's part of it too. So what I love, you can do a lot in this work. There's some people who work in like rehabilitation centers and really just kind of do that whole thing. There's some people who work in agencies that have both. It's a rehab center and kind of a therapeutic center. What I specialize in is mental health, and so I really like working more doing one-on-one direct care. Um, and and the work too is also, it's not like I'm not a clinical therapist, so it's not like a thing where I have a private practice and people will just randomly call me. I am integrated into an individual's team of care. So like the places that I personally find the most beneficial and that I like to work in um, are behavioral health agencies that kind of have the scope of care for everything. So a client can come in, see a psychiatrist, get the medication management, go to the clinical therapist to work on like the really deep, rooted issues. And then I'm kind of this middleman almost, where we work. So with the client, I work more on the here and now, the recovery aspect of their mental health. And then it's a collaboration piece. We're collaborating with the clinical supervisors, the clinical therapists, the medical care, and it's kind of this. So I think it's really important because it gives people the full spectrum of care. Like a lot of times you go into a therapy center and you're just seeing a therapist, or you just go to a psychiatrist, and psychiatrists typically don't do therapy. So you're just getting, so agencies that I love to work in and do the work that I do in are like that, where somebody can come in and they can kind of check every box as part of their care. Um, and what else would I have to say about the work? I mean, yeah, it's really just, it's very mutual. It comes also from lived experience. So I think I'll talk about that like a little bit later, but you have to, in order to do this work, you have to have what they call lived experience. So I myself have suffered from SMI, severe mental illness, and in order to do kind of the recovery coaching, that's why they developed this role, because it's somebody working with you, working with a client that at some point has been in your shoes one way or another, which is really unique because a lot of clinical people, you're learning strictly, like didactic learning. And so I think that that's an important piece. And then what I also love about it, and another huge part of it, is I'm also an advocate. So I'm somebody in the system. So I'm part of the system, but I'm also in the system to be an advocate. So, there could be a miscommunication between therapist and client, and it turns into a big thing. I can get involved, advocate for the client, create a mutual understanding, between the two. Or also, sometimes, unfortunately, I had in my career, which hasn't been very long so far, but already I've seen clients be treated very terribly, and I have no problem speaking up about that, and I did. It did not turn out well with me and the person I spoke out against, but I was very much like, no, like, this person, it's unacceptable what happened. So the advocacy part is a huge part of it. And my last thing I'll say about it is CPSW work is incredibly what we call trauma informed, um, which isn't necessarily integrated into um, like master's programs all the time. I'm not speaking for every program or every school, um, but certainly a lot of medical professions are not trauma informed. So trauma informed is a big part of CPSW work, and just me personally, I take it to the next level, and it's about kind of the theory that a lot of our issues aren't necessarily like pathological, like a lot of our stuff comes from traumas, and trauma does not just mean PTSD. You don't just have to have trauma from a car accident or something super severe. Trauma can be so covert, and so it's about understanding that, and understanding that when people are coming in to work with me or work with anybody, but especially if somebody's working with me, it's about that understanding that what they are going through, there could be traumas there, that happened in their life, and sometimes people don't even realize it. Being hit with a belt as a kid, people never consider that really trauma. I mean, people say, oh, that's how it was back in the day, that's just what people did, but no, like that was trauma, that your caregivers were hurting you. So that's kind of trauma informed care, and that's a big part of the work, and I really take it to the next level when I work with people as far as trauma informed. So I think that was a lot, but I hope that answered the question.
Absolutely. That was so interesting to learn about how there, like, I was just picturing like the hospital, a medical system where there's like a specialist for this, there's the nurse, there's a nurse practitioner, there's the doctor, there's the radiation specialist, there's like a team of people that is helping that person to get better. But personally, I've never thought of the mental health side of the health spectrum, or the just health, I don't know, realm, as
Yes.
as needing or being able to benefit from a team. I've seen therapists for years, and I really only think of like therapists when I think mental health. But
Right.
that's so interesting. I learned just so much in listening to you, and also about trauma, and like I'm curious to learn more about that, like the trauma side of things that like many people, like you said, may not even realize that they have or exposed to. It just seems like you just in that answer, at least for me, you like enlightened me a lot about the mental health realm, as well as some of the causes that people might not even be aware of issues in their lives that they could seek help for. That's really
Right.
cool.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. And it is very interesting, just the work. And I agree with you on kind of the whole team thing. That doesn't historically, that hasn't really. I mean, you can go to a psych hospital, and that's kind of how it is. But like typically, just the mental health care system in general isn't set up really in a team approach, and so that's what this work kind of integrates, and it's really important. And it is true, I really do like to advocate for trauma, because so many people don't think that they have it. Like you said, they just may not even know. And sometimes talking about things and getting educated on trauma, because there's complex trauma, and some people realize, like, it can be like a light bulb, like, this is wow, like this is why my behavior is this way, or this is why I'm responding this way, because this thing happened to me that I didn't even think was a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, amazing. How did you get started in the field?
So I hope so. This is it's an interesting question and going to be an interesting answer. because I mentioned that in order to do this work, you have to have some lived experience. So I'm not going to sit here and like give a memoir, but I have to kind of go through a little bit of my life journey a little bit, because ultimately, like, my life led me to this work. I mean, my careers, my traumas, things I've been through, my diagnoses.
Mhm.
So I'll keep it as short as I can. But um, so how I got into this work, I kind of got to go back a little bit. So, growing up as a kid, I was what I now know, I suffered from severe anxiety and depression. But as a kid, and I mean, I'm 27 years old, so I'm not like old, and I'm not from that generation where there was just zero understanding of mental health. But even back when I was in high school, there was still, I mean, in the past, since then, there's not a lot of there wasn't a lot of understanding of mental health, especially with kids, because we always think kids are resilient, kids will be fine, like they get through it, but that is not the case. But I had a lot of anxiety. I always thought I was just shy, and that's what everybody told me. Josh is shy. He doesn't want to, do this or that, and people thought I was like lazy all the time. And so I grew up with that, and I did notice, like, things my classmates would want to do, I wouldn't want to do, because it was like there was this feeling around it, like this, what is anxiousness, but at the time I didn't understand what it was.
Mm.
And everything pretty much was good, I was a great student, you know, heavily involved in extracurricular activities. I did theater. That was the first career I pursued. I was the president of our thespian society, AB student up until my senior year, and doing all of that, doing a lot. I was training in opera and musical theater and
Wow.
music, yeah, and doing private lessons. And I also did during that time too. Growing up, I did. I was pursuing theater. I was a member of Sound of Music National Tour. I did a lot of paid regional theater. I'm originally from Florida, so there was a lot there.
Mhm.
But then my senior year of high school, things really came, things at home were really bad. And that was kind of the trigger where the facade kind of came crashing down. And I could not be this good student, this good son, this good, everything came crashing down. And I was doing really bad behaviors at school, skipping classes. So I went from being like AB student, just doing all of this amazing stuff at school, and to almost not graduating. And what happened, I do have a beef still to this day with kind of the public school system, and they're getting better at it, but again, not trauma informed, very little mental health resources for students. But it was interesting because you would think a group of adults, because I got found out, like they found out I was skipping, wasn't going to graduate, how bad my grades were. Everybody found out, parents, my family. um, and so basically it was this like intervention at school. And you would think a group of adults, most with master's level educations, would have some sort of understanding, or, like recognize this is, I consider 17, 18 years old, I consider that a child. So it's like, here's this child that's been an exemplary student. And just all of a sudden, there wasn't a single adult that questioned, like, what's going on here? Like, is
Are
there
you
something
okay?
right? Like there was none of that. And in fact, I was actually told by the school guidance counselor who was kind of managing my case, I guess. She actually explicitly told me that I was a bad student, a bad child, and a bad son. And
Wow. And she called you a bad son.
she did, yes. She was like, and she followed it with, my son would never do this to
Oh
me.
God.
And so it was like, that was really rough time. And then I did end up graduating, and then I was pursuing theater. So I moved from Florida to Ohio. I went to a school, and I studied musical theater. um, But again, the mental health popped back up. I was away from home for the first time, slowly making new friends. Couldn't get out of bed, like couldn't go to class. And it got to the point, um, you know, I was having breakdowns like every day. And I told my parents, and my father was not very happy about me coming back, but I did. And so I came home and it was like, what am I going to do now? And my father, growing up, the family business was real estate investing, which is how I got into real estate investing originally.
Got it.
So I came home and I was like, well, I'll join the family business. Like, I think I can be good at real estate. I also realized I did not want to do theater because of, I love the art of theater. I love the art and the craft. I don't like the business aspect of it. I don't like the behind the scenes culture of it. So I thought, I think real estate will be great. And I thought, and then my ultimate goal was then to become a licensed broker. So to get out of investing and go into brokerage. And so I was living with my father and working with him at the time. And I'm a gay male, so part of the LGBTQ community. And he knew I was gay since high school, but we never talked about it. It was never like it was, I knew, like, I knew that he knew. I knew that he knew. He knew that I knew that he knew. And we just never talked about it. And, I was at that. So after I came back from college, I was at that age where I'm starting to date. And I obviously didn't tell him. He saw I had a boyfriend because picked me up and kicked me out. So all of a sudden, yeah, I spent time homeless, very displaced, sleeping in my car at one point. I had squatted in houses at one point, couch surfing, the whole thing. Fast forward, I eventually, get part-time jobs, get my stuff together, find a place to live. And then in the interim of all of that, I ended up meeting my now fiance. And
Congrats.
thank you. And this just happened last week. So
Oh, wow.
very happy. Yeah. So thank you. But
That's amazing.
yeah, thank you. So and we've been together now. It's been 8 years. So
Wow.
it's been a long time coming. But so so anyway, then I got my real estate license. That's then when I got into, so I got out of the part-time job stuff, got my official real estate license, became a broker in Florida. But then my fiance got a opportunity in the middle of nowhere, in New Mexico. And so we moved there. And in my mind, I'm thinking Hallmark. I'm thinking, like small little town, like I'm thinking like a Hallmark movie. And I had not even visited there before we went. It was not a Hallmark movie. There was homophobia. There was so I was doing good at first because I joined a really successful real estate team. I was killing it in the real estate game there. But again, like feeling very suppressed in this very small town. Again, not knowing anybody, being so far from family. I started to notice like it was the depression again, which at the time I still didn't recognize was depression. I always just thought I was lazy. I had no idea. I was like, I just must be lazy because, connecting it to trauma, that's what I was told my entire childhood by teachers, family, like that.
You're
I was
just shy. That's
yeah, shy, lazy. So I would be laying in bed in physical, emotional pain, thinking I'm just a pathetic, shy, lazy person. And again, like lying to get out of showings and meetings and all of that. But then interestingly, on the flip side, I would go through weeks of, I could say there was a point in a matter of 3 weeks, I had 10 hours of sleep.
wow.
And I'm just go, 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 go,
In
go,
3
go.
weeks. Oh my God.
Yeah. And not even, and I didn't feel tired either. I did not even feel tired. So I would work from sun up till sundown. Which at the time I thought this is great. Like I'm productive. I'm getting so much done. My team is happy. I'm making, selling more houses. But I was also partying really hard and way too much. I mean, I actually partied so hard one night I broke my ankle.
Oh
Uh,
no.
so things were getting a little concerning. But in that point, I was just kind of living in like moment to moment. Like, I didn't understand what was going on. And the turning point for me was it started to affect my partner and I. And, um, like I would get a commission check, nice commission checks, and just gone on shopping, like gone. And then just a lot of the behavioral stuff affecting just our personal life and everything. And so I was
Mhm.
like, I don't know what's going on with me. I should talk to somebody. I went to a therapist. Her and I did some good work for a while. And eventually she proposed to me bipolar disorder. And upon her describing that to me, I was like, well, that makes sense. The ups, the downs, the truly polar experience. So she referred me to a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist confirmed it. I immediately, amped up my therapy, now knowing what this diagnosis is. I, started medication treatment, and not to kind of digress, but I'm regarding diagnoses, like I'm very against the mental health system has a huge problem with like over pathologizing people. I mean, like it seems a lot of what the system wants to do is come in, do an intake. Okay, you check these boxes. Here's a diagnosis. And so many people get misdiagnosed or given a diagnosis that they don't even have. So I'm really against kind of that quick, like, okay, we suspect this. Let's check boxes. And then, okay, now you have this life changing diagnosis. However, for me, it was helpful because I had no idea what was going on with me. Now I knew what was going on with me. I could put a name to it. There's communities, medication treatment. And so we eventually, and I'm getting closer to the end of this. So we we eventually moved to the big city of New Mexico, which is Albuquerque, and I landed a really coveted real estate job. And I'm sure but real estate is typically like you're an independent contractor, you're kind of on your own, doing your own thing. This
Mhm.
was like a corporate salary job, which was great because it had full benefits. I mean, free travel, cities all over the country. I mean, the whole thing. And then they just give you all the business. So I was really killing it in that too. I mean, I was closing 3 to 6 deals a month. But they have metrics, quotas. I mean, it is corporate, corporate, corporate. You got to fly to Seattle and have these, you got to do these intense review periods. And so that was, moving to a bigger city was better on my mental health, but still, like at the time, not knowing many people, um, being in living with bipolar disorder, it's constant changing medications, like trial and error, which
Oh,
really affects your body. And so the job was really rough on me. And long story short, I eventually had a full blown nervous breakdown. I mean, a full blown like break.
oh,
And yeah, so I took a leave of absence. And in the leave of absence, I realized this job with my mental health, it's too much. Even going back to independent, like private work, too much. Which was, so I ended up just quitting the job, which was, scary because it's like, well, what am I going to do now? I've had like these 2 careers I've tried, it's not working out. And I'm also very, 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 very privileged and grateful for the fact that because of, my partner, I was able to take off work because so many people cannot do that. Like they have to. So for that, I want to throw that out there because that is privilege. And that is like, I really recognize that. I recognize that to this day. To be able to take that time to kind of get better, figure out what are the next steps. So I did an IOP program, intensive outpatient, and really got my stuff together. And then everything going on in the world that's been going on. You know, I really started to get heavily involved in politics, advocacy, you know, in my free time as I was getting better, psychology. And I realized, like, how do I get involved here? And I realized I wanted to go back to school. And at some point a light bulb just went off and I was like, social work. I want to go to school for social work, you know, BSW, MSW, because you can do so much in social work. You know, ultimately, I want to be a therapist, which you can do as a social worker. But social work is a lot about, you know, compared to like a degree in counseling or psychology, social work is really about social justice, advocacy. Um, and then, so I had started school, and then I'm a big podcast nerd, and I can't even keep up with the mental health podcasts. Like I try, and I'm like, I need to start unsubscribing because
Yeah. There's
I
so many
can't like.
good podcast episodes to listen to. Like create stress. You're like, I only have so many hours.
I know exactly, and so it's like yikes. But on the one, I was listening to one podcast, and they were talking about peer support work, which in, you know, all my years of my recovery, never heard of that. And the person on the podcast was describing it um, similarly to, I guess, how I kind of described it at the beginning. But I was just like, that is what I want to do. Like that's me. Like that job is me, and I can do that. And when I heard that, I've never in my life, Gabe, not with real estate, not with theater, I've never actually felt like when I think about the work that I do, like there's something inside me, like, oh, like I was tingling inside, like it lit my soul up, which
Amazing.
amazing. And I've never had that happen with any, and the thought of social work too did the same thing to me. And so I was like, okay, like this is my calling. I found it. So
Oh, that's
um,
fantastic.
I know. And then the process was pretty intense. You have to like go do this huge application, do multiple phone interviews. There's a very intense training. You have to do an internship, um, uh, do a board application, wait for that, sit for a board exam, pass the board exam. So the whole thing, which is good because we want vetted people in mental health.
Right.
But yeah, so like I said, that was pretty long because I had to, but I hope that makes sense of why I shared that, because that is the big segue into this work that I pursued.
It does. That again, feel like I'm like just learning so much and just, quiet over here, like soaking it up. Is this, it's it's so, I mean, thank you for like providing your personal story and history as it
Yeah,
relates to the work that's done. Because as you mentioned, like it, I mean, that's great that people that are providing care have familiarity with things that the people that they're providing care to are struggling with. And it's not, it's not like, as you mentioned, a didactic like learning where it's kind of like, you read the book and you take the test and you do this, and then you provide a box of care that is the same shape for everyone.
right.
Perhaps like psychiatry, where it's like, okay, the industry is just, it's very robotic, mechanical, and it's great to, again, to have your story, to understand like what someone in this work brings to this work. And that's amazing that you like found your calling, as you mentioned. Like when you feel that, just that, as you mentioned, the thing that lights your soul on fire, you just, it's so pure, and you just
Right.
feel so good. And it's fantastic when people find that. So congratulations to that, and for getting engaged as well. That's amazing.
Thank Yeah. Thank you for all of that. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, to dive in more, like how do you see your career evolving over time from here?
So I definitely, I started with, I went, I enrolled in school. I enrolled in school. So my ultimate goal, I enrolled in school before the peer support work, but my ultimate goal is to get my BSW in social work, my MSW in social work, and I want the BSW because you can do an accelerated master's.
Hmm.
and then ultimately to be an LCSW, so a licensed clinical social worker. And then I want to start as a psychotherapist, but then ultimate, start at an agency, kind of do stuff like that. Ultimately, move into private practice, um, and then I guess after I do private practice, maybe around I don't know, when I'm more ready to settle down, I would really love to take the experiences that I've had from the work that I do now, then the clinical work I'll do in the future, and then um, really be able to get into true activism, advocacy, have
Mm.
make sure I have a platform for myself. And then really a dream of mine would be with what I just said, taking all these experiences, and I wouldn't know what it would necessarily be about. It would be about mental health, but to write a book, kind of about all of this stuff that I'm so passionate about that I'm going to be doing for decades.
Yeah. Well, you absolutely should. There's nothing in this day and age stopping anyone from like pursuing media. Art is an expression. Art is, is kind of a word for it, but also like just an expression of someone's creativity, experience, thoughts. You should definitely, I would, highly encourage you, for what it's worth, from this side, to write a book. I would absolutely read it. And I feel like a lot of people would gain a lot of insights and a lot of help from reading that book. Um, yeah, that would be great to see.
Yeah, thank you. So one day in the long, probably decades from now, but one day.
Well, let me know. Let me know, and I'll put it up. I plan to do people just like you for the rest of my life. So
I love it.
we'll people in the future, we will link to the book below.
Yes, everybody in decades probably from now, there's going to be a book coming out. Set your calendars.
We'll do blog posts in the meantime. Like, there's nothing to stop you either from like expressing this and like starting to do it as you go along. Like,
Exactly.
that would be
Yeah.
great to read too.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. And I've been working on that. That's a project I'm working on. I'm starting like a blog slash mental health resource thing. So it's a blog, but then there's also a forum. So people can like log in and comment and share thoughts, and it'll be for peers and people in recovery. But yeah, so I'm actually kind of working on that too.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'd be happy to link to that or anything that you have here and now as well in the post.
Thank you.
Cool. So, in what moments throughout the day do you feel, day or week, most comfortable?
When do I feel the most comfortable? That's a good question. Honestly, I mean, I'm just the most comfortable. I can be a very like I can be a very heated, passionate person. Like if I'm out somewhere, and I mean, I guess this was more pre-COVID. It's not so much these days, but I'm big. It's like I meet somebody new, and um, sometimes even if they're not willing, I mean, I go in about mental health, and I love to have conversations like that. So, but it can be a little tiring. And out and about in my day-to-day life, I'm pretty busy with, doing, mental health stuff. And I can be a pretty serious person and very, a little bit neurotic. So when I'm most comfortable is when I'm at home, and cooking and relaxing. And so like when I think about being comfortable, I mean just the images in my head, which is one of my favorite things to do is either put on some music or put on like a good movie or TV show, have a nice glass of wine, um, and cook. And I try, since the pandemic, it's even before the pandemic. I'm not going to make myself sound like I've been some healthy, but I try to keep things healthier. I do have a sensitive gut. I try to eat healthy, but if I'm cooking, I mean, Italian food, I make a killer carbonara, cacio e pepe, alla
Ooh.
vodka. Like, so that is like my comfortable thing. Like, I love, my little glass of wine, I'm cooking up, my fiance and dog are relaxing, and that is like just, And we also just bought a house, and we have a beautiful view. And I try to take as much time. I've kind of got away from that recently, so I'm glad I just reminded myself. But I love to kind of go out there. New Mexico has mountains, so it's just beautiful to look at. And I totally am mindful. I'm so present when, I'm cooking, I'm with my family, I'm enjoying the views of where we live. And so those are my comfortable moments, my safe places.
Amazing. Well, congrats on yet another thing to big
Thanks.
accomplishment, getting a house, buying a house. That's
Yeah, thanks.
there's a lot happening in your life.
There is. Yeah, it's exciting.
A lot of
It's
good things.
exciting.
Cool. Well, on the other side of the question, if you're open to sharing, are there any moments that you can think of or picture throughout the day or week when you really feel like not so comfortable?
Yes. And it does tie into my mental health a little bit because I am a creative person. I told you I originally went to school for theater. Um,
Mhm.
I literally, I mean, I was trained. I spent 10 years training brilliant. He's passed away now, but brilliant vocal teacher. Um, and I'm also educated on the benefits of I'm getting to a point here. I'm like going on, but I'm getting to the point of what makes me uncomfortable. But
Mhm.
anyway, I love singing, and I'm very educated on the therapeutic benefits of singing, especially regarding breathing, because when you sing, you're taking in kind of a quick exhale. I mean, inhale, long exhale. It's really that, like, it's mindful breathing. So I like to sing. I love to read like novels. I like to read research, actually mental health research, which is so boring to some people, but reading like the abstract and the whole, and I'm like, I
The
guess that would
passion is
be,
there.
yeah,
Your
that would,
soul is like all of it. It doesn't
right,
anything in it in the field.
right.
It's
And
great.
I love art. I love yeah, I'm a very artistic and creative I'm not artistic. I can't draw anything beyond a stick figure. That's the only thing I can draw. But artistic, performance artistic I am. So if I'm uncomfortable, if whether it's because of my mental health, or whether it's like if I'm having a bad mental health day, or if it's because I've just depleted all of creative things for the week or something, I feel very uncomfortable when I can't be like creative.
Mm.
Like, actually today I didn't have anything to do today. So this morning I was just singing. I do my scale work, and I get my sheet music out, and I sing. And so that was great. But if there's days like where I went through all my books, or maybe there's some depression and I don't feel like singing, or if I can't be being creative, and movies too, not I love a lot of movies, silly movies, horror movies, but I love profound movies, like artistic movies.
Mhm.
Um, so if there's kind of nothing for me to latch onto that's like creative, or that's going to get my mind thinking and my body my body and mind in motion,
Mhm.
that is when I am deeply uncomfortable, because I just feel, I mean, I have exercises I can do to kind of, make sure I'm fine, but I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh, I wish I had a good book right now, or I felt like singing, or there was a new movie I could stick on.
Yeah. Very interesting. Um, that makes sense. It's like if it's something that recharges you, like the thing that recharges you, if that's depleted, it's tough to
Right.
it's tough to get through the
Uncomfortable.
rest of it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable. Yeah. Cool. Um, what was something that inspired you recently?
Uh, so this is like such a cliche kind of thing, but it has not happened to me in so long. And just with so much hustle and bustle, and now that the pandemic is slowly, we're getting a little bit more normal, and there's more hustle bustle, and everything's just kind of all over the place. I was having I wouldn't say a bad day. I was just kind of in a rush day. I went to go get coffee through the drive-through. And I'm just, I'm in one of those moments where like there's one car in front of me, but I'm already like tapping my finger on, I'm like, like chop chop, I need my coffee here. And so it was one of those days. And so I got up and I paid, or I was going to pay for my coffee. And it was one of those simple things where the lady, I guess in front of me, she paid for my drink.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, and she even said like, just like, she was like, whoever's drink this is for, like, she had this like beautiful message to say. She was like, tell this person, I hope that they're doing well, and that, and I was just like, blindsided by that. And I've obviously that's happened to me before, the whole pay it forward, but it was just like, that's a nice thing to do, especially in these times when everybody's so worked up. And so I paid for, in that moment that inspired me. I paid for the person behind me too. But even thinking about that, that was maybe a month ago, and that still pops up in my mind. And I don't know, it kind of inspires me and reminds me, just find moments to be kind to people, and could just totally make somebody's day, because she totally made my day. And I
Yeah.
went from like tapping on the steering wheel to like driving away and feeling like, wow, something kind of really nice just happened.
That is so inspiring. I, I I've heard of random acts of kindness before, and things like that, but I've actually never heard of anyone paying for the person behind them in a a dry like a coffee line. But that's
Yeah,
so cool. I'm gonna go out and do that. I saw some chalk art on the street,
that's
and
so cool.
it was like uh, just little inspiring messages and things. And I went out and bought a chalk set, and it's been raining here, so I haven't gone out yet. But I like was inspired with it. I'm like, why don't I just go around like writing little inspirational messages on like random sidewalk squares one
Yeah,
day?
that's so cool.
Like little, like you said, little things that surprise people, that like just make them stop for a minute and be present, and like relax a little bit, and just appreciate the magic that exists in the world, that you can forget so easily is actually there.
Right. Yeah, and that's exactly what that was. Like that was a moment, it just brought me right into the present. And I was like, wow. And yeah, if you decide to do that, like you'll make somebody's day, because I was not having a very good day and it totally turned my day around.
Yeah.
And I still think about it, and I'm still like, whoever that woman is, I'm thinking about you, and like how kind of you. So
Yeah. Well, that came back a month later. That ripple is going into this interview. It will go further from here. Like, we have no idea how far the ripples of the things that we do in life extend.
right,
No clue.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, we don't know. So that's why doing just little nice kindness and noticing the beauty is, noticing beauty as in just whatever, nice things in the world or people, or, I wasn't thinking about the car in front of me, and I wasn't thinking about the car behind me. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, there's a human being, like there's somebody going through something, or maybe not, or, whatever. It's just like, it just kind of ties into, makes me think of this, what you do here. It's like,
Yeah,
we're all people, and we go through stuff, and I think we forget that like so much. Like we're all so busy with our own, but we're all so much more connected, or we could be more connected than we realize.
totally, totally. Well, I'm glad to I'm appreciative of the universe for connecting us together. And
Yeah, me
if you
too.
have a little extra time, I have two last questions for you.
Okay.
Uh,
I'm ready.
so, in speaking of kind of passing it on, in each interview, we like to ask each person, like, what's the question you'd like to ask someone else, and then bring that question forward to someone. So, our previous interviewee, Feroz, asks, we all need the world needs love, sweet love, but what else could make the world a more peaceful place to live?
I'm going to give a little bit more, I'm going to give somewhat of an assertive answer. I think, honestly, ignorance mitigation. And I don't mean ignorance in a derogatory way. I really mean it in like the misunderstanding, because I think that we don't understand one another, like culturally, like whatever, like there's so little understanding of the people that we share this earth with. And I think if there was, and I think that's what causes so many problems. I've had people that know nothing about me that just hate me because I'm gay. And I feel like if they were to know me and understand me, and vice versa in situations, there would be more peace. Like we would have a more peaceful, happy society. So that's my answer really is like to mitigate ignorance.
Love it. Shine the light of experience and connection and curiosity and just being for a minute in the present.
Right.
It feels like it's all connected to like just as you mentioned, ignorance mitigation. Like come out of yourself,
Yeah.
don't draw into yourself and feel like you need to put up and defend from everything out there because then you will never stop.
Right.
And even in
Exactly.
your own family, like once you start doing it elsewhere, you can't stop something that seeps into your subconscious and becomes automatic from drawing ever closer to to you in your life.
Yeah, that's what you said is spot on, like brilliant, spot on.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to open the opportunity to you to pass on a question to the next person I talk to, if you'd like.
I think I would like to know, this has been a chat about my work, which has to do with mental health. I think, a lot of people didn't know what self care was before the pandemic, and some people didn't during, and some people still don't. And I think self care now, I mean, it always is important, but I think especially now, self care is really important. And I mean, I guess I'm curious, like, for the next person, what do they what do they think of when they think of self-care? And what does self-care look like to them? And why do they think it's important?
Hmm. I'll find out the answer and get back to you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the answer. I'm curious to know people's thoughts and ideas on self-care. And it's
Yeah,
interesting how different everybody's responses are.
yeah, definitely. Well, I'll get back to you on that real soon.
Okay, cool.
Well, Josh, it's been a true pleasure. Thank you so much for chatting with me and everyone who's listening and following along and sharing your story and insights as well. This has really, really been nice.
Yeah, it has been great for me. I was really excited and I thought this was fantastic. And I thank you for starting this because I'm a big fan of it now and I'm a big fan of this now and I think it's just great what you're doing. So thank you.
Definitely. Yeah, it was Humans of New York, Brandon Stanton was really inspiring. Just
Yeah.
how he left his job in like I think finance in Chicago and just went around and decided like I'm just going to go take 10,000 pictures of New Yorkers or 10,000 photos of New Yorkers. And then it blossomed and it grew from there. And it's just so interesting to get a little like window into someone else's life. And
Yeah,
so
it is.
yeah, we'll see where this goes and all that. And yeah, it's been nice. So
Yeah. All
thanks for
right.
coming on and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you for having me. It's been great.